3, 2, 1. It is Friday at 1 p.m. Actually, technically, it's 1:01 p.m. So here we are live on Shally's Alley. This week, I would like to welcome our very special guest, Steve. Steve Rawlings is an LGBTQA plus inclusion champion that has more than 25 years of experience. How many more? I'm not going to tell you, but more than 25 years of experience leading all aspects of global talent acquisition. He started in contract recruiting as a consultant, working on multiple projects. Many of you out there you are familiar with that. You know how much you learn about businesses when you're in a contract recruiting role. But he's specialized over the years in talent sourcing, something that he calls strategic talent forecasting, which we're going to ask him about, and recruitment enablement. I love that phrase because there's a title called sales enablement. And I understand that role from some recruiting that I did. I really get the relation between sales enablement and recruitment enablement. So I'm definitely going to talk to him about that as well. So today we're going to talk about recruiting operations, ATSs, CRMs, technology, trends, global diversity, international hiring, metrics, whatever. So welcome today to Shally's Alley. Steve, are you ready? Say hi.
Oh yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me, Shally. This is awesome.
Oh, my pleasure. It's always fun to have good, interesting guests on the show. By the way, love the custom hat. That's there's got to be a story to that.
Yep. Yeah, my husband is an artist, so we had this hat sitting around, and he said, I'm a hat type of guy, so he said I definitely needed a logo to match the shirt. So
is that painted or sewn or stitched? Looks painted.
It's painted. It's a paint markers. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So it's pretty permanent. Cool. Looks pretty cool. It's not quite done yet. But
if I need any logo design, I think I know who to call. Yeah. So before we jump into the couple of ideas that you had for discussion today, I did want to ask you about strategic talent forecasting and about recruitment enablement, because I was very curious about that.
Sure.
Tell me in just a couple of sentences, without going too much into the how of it, what is strategic talent forecasting? What does that mean?
Well, there's this great book, the Harvard Business Review. Everybody, I think, a recruiter should read it. It's called Talent Wins. It's basically talking about how there's, in an organization, there's kind of like three legs of a stool. And one is the vision that is led by the CEO. One is the finance aspect led by the CFO. And then the third leg of the stool is talent. You can have a great idea and all the money in the world, but if you don't have the people to implement it, it's not going to get off the ground. So it's along the idea of hiring for today, but also hiring for tomorrow, thinking about what the organization is going to look like, 6 weeks down the road, 6 months down the road, 6 years down the road, and trying to find ways to prepare for that by building talent communities, planting seeds, employer branding, and maintaining strong alliances and partnerships with your hiring managers and executive teams, so that you can stay on the same page and be ready to provide the talent to enable that vision.
That sounds like a pretty big deal. And maybe I'm being naive here, but forgive me for saying that seems like that should be the CHRO's world, not the recruiters.
Well,
right?
Sure. And we take orders from top down, but as leading sourcing, I think the old idea of sourcing was, okay, I've got this need, run out and find somebody. But we all know how competitive the talent market is. So there's a lot of cultivating and a lot of nurturing that has to be involved. And I did this early on in my career. Early on, I was recruiting private wealth folks. These guys that have books of business with $100 million, for wealthier clients. And these guys, those folks would move on a whim. So you really had to establish a relationship with them, and wait for the timing. So early on, I learned that you had to kind of find your talent pool out there, figure out who's the best of the best, who you really want, and be talking with these people. And sometimes it would take years, but the result was we had some really huge wins. An example comes to mind was during the mortgage boom in the 2000s. Washington Mutual. I was the head of recruiting and sourcing for SunTrust Mortgage for the Mid-Atlantic region, which included all of Greater Washington, D.C. It's a huge market because of all of the transitions of politics, and of course the cost of real estate. And I was talking to a guy that did tens of millions in profit for Washington Mutual in that market because he had a lot of diplomatic ties. And it wasn't until Washington Mutual decided to close all their East Coast offices that I got a call at 6 o'clock in the morning one day when he got news that they're going to announce that, and wanted to know if we could take his whole team. So it's those kinds of planting those seeds, and I've been talking with the guy for over a year.
It's a combination.
For very, very talented, sought-after people. Yeah, you have to have that relationship.
It's a big win for you, and it's a big win for them because they have other business that caused them to shut down, and you could pick up good people, and they would take care of their people. That's not what you traditionally think of when you think of recruiting. So the strategic talent forecasting is about what? It's about understanding where you're going to know. It's not workforce planning as much as it is understanding what kind of talent you're going to need in the future and starting to plan for whatever eventuality might happen. And in my mind, strategy is about finding different ways to do something so that when you encounter an obstacle, you have options for overcoming the obstacle, right? It's like, I don't know if it was Mike Tyson that said, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth, right? So you can have this plan, you go out there, and then all of a sudden you get punched in the mouth. And if you don't have a plan B and a plan C, that's on you. And so that's what I think strategy is we have a vision for what we want to do, but what happens when that doesn't work? We do this. But so you're saying forecasting is about projecting what the talent is that we might need and what we could do, even if we don't know what those jobs are going to be, right?
Yep, and partnering with your hiring managers to try to find talent to fill jobs now that they feel that they can groom and cultivate into leadership roles in the future. Staying in touch with your silver medalists, so to speak. When you have 3 great candidates for one job, making sure that the runners up, stay engaged. All these things are really important so that you don't have to start all over every time a job opens.
I get that. And so let me ask you about the other thing, the recruitment enablement.
Sure.
Now, sales enablement, what I know about sales enablement, and I spent maybe about 2 years working on roles for that when I was at Fiserv. But from what I know about that, essentially it's everything that has to do with the technology and the planning of, for example, obtaining data. I can see how sourcing is part of that because in sales enablement, there's the lead generation, then there's the quality of that data, grooming it, there's segmenting it, there's planning campaigns. They also do the recruitment marketing for us. In sales enablement, it's these they do the very tactical email that is not specifically directly related to a conversion, but it's related to generating opportunities, right? So in my mind, sales enablement is the things that get done before a salesperson is working on the account. So how does that translate to recruitment?
Well, sure. I mean, my very first, I got into recruiting in the mid '90s. It kind of dates me, but I mean, I was a researcher
me too, right there with
for
you.
a retained search headhunter. So doing a lot of research for executive roles. I spent most of my day in the library with those things called books and digging through magazines. Yeah, no, seriously though, digging through magazines, just looking for articles, and we're looking for, lead engineer or something like that, digging through the magazines, about, that industry and trying to find names of mention and tracking them down the old fashioned way, looking up the company in the phone book. And I remember playing with the voicemail systems at night, just punching numbers to see what numbers went where and mapping out the company. I was good old fashioned org charting. Now, all this stuff, I remember getting giddy when the Dun & Bradstreet directory came out on a CD-ROM. That was like, wow, this is great. And now everything's kind of at our fingertips. And
so
everything that we need to do, I always said, that recruiting was the hardest sales job in the world. And because if you sell a house or a car, you don't have to convince the car to go home with the buyer, right?
And the car doesn't get to the house.
That's right.
Go, well, wait a minute, I don't want to be here.
No, wait, I don't like this house. You can't park. Every time. That's right. Wait, I thought there was going to be a 2-car garage. What is this? And leave. And so I always said that the recruiting was the hardest sales job in the world because it's really more like being a marriage counselor in a way. You're trying to create a relationship here, and there's so many opportunities for that relationship not to take not to take fruition, and you don't have to worry about that if you're selling a car. They want the car, take it home. So in a very real way, I've always looked at us as being salespeople. We carry the corporate brand to people that we want to have work for us, and that they have the talent, the skills that we need to be successful. So there's a lot of selling that goes on, I think, with how we talk to candidates. We have to, and at the same time, be honest about challenges and about, the market and things like that, and have the ability to take things that people might look at as being a negative and show the positive side of it. Yeah, we just went through a transition, but that means that, we identified these problems and we're growing. And being a consultant for 15 years, pretty much every company that I went into, that was about that time, when they were coming out of a fire or cleaning up a mess or going through some sort of merger or whatever. And that's the hardest time to recruit, when a company's making the news for not good reasons. And it's about the story. And then it comes all the tools. And then comes employer branding. And then comes looking at diversity. So these are all pieces of an overall puzzle that being in sourcing that we need to be in touch with. We don't need to do all of it. We have, at ThoughtSpot, we have a great employer branding team. We have a great marketing team. But we need to partner with those people so that message is consistent. And because in a real way, when we pick up the phone and talk to a candidate, we're selling the company. And if we don't get them as a candidate and leave a bad impression, we won't get them as a customer either. So you're saying it's the connecting of all of that. It's the connective tissue around all of that. Yep. So sales enablement does talk to marketing, but they're not marketing. They do talk to sales, but they're not sales. They talk to IT. Exactly. They're the ones that manage the Salesforce account and, groom the data, and they talk to statistical analysis people and big data people. So that's what you're saying is recruitment enablement. It's the same thing. Okay, I gotcha. And so how do you end up there? Like, is this someday you just said, I'm done with sourcing. I think, guys, sourcing's not enough of a challenge because it's too easy. So I'm going to go do recruitment enablement now. How did that happen? Well, it's an evolution, right? Our jobs have changed. You and I both been doing this a long time. We've known each other a long time. Our jobs change, but not everybody made this. Our jobs change. A lot of us just sit in this job and don't really even know what the next, something I get a lot from people in the sourcing community is, what's my career progression? Well, obviously, senior sourcer, sourcing manager, sourcing director, we have global head of sourcing, we have vice president of sourcing, but there's these other things, right? So recruitment enablement sure. can kind of be a career path for us. I think that, I really enjoy like the startup space, because there's this, I've worked for for banks a lot of my career in financial institutions, and they have their way of doing stuff that they've been doing since, 1865. And so being innovative in those environments can be a challenge, but I was always known as kind of being the loudmouth and the one that would, say what I thought we should do anyway.
That's how you got into it. I gotcha.
Sometimes it backfired, and I was, scolded. And other times it turned out really well. But I think that in a spirit of transparency, which is what we try to foster in today's model of an organization, that if we're going to say we're transparent and challenge your boss and speak your mind and share your ideas, then we need to do that. And I think that has been one of the things that's helped sourcing grow. I mean, we used to be looked upon as like recruiting assistants when I started, like we're junior recruiters, right?
Yeah.
And now sourcing has taken on its
profession,
and that's because I think those of us like you and I that have been doing this a while, we realized that to do our jobs exceptionally well, we had to do more than just dig through lists of candidates. We had to understand the business. We had to understand the market. We had to have insights so that we could speak intelligently with the people that we're trying to recruit, and offer real good, meaningful, strategy information and market information back to our hiring managers so that they know what's going on out there, so they can find the right people. The Goldilocks syndrome, that in my generation, we would always, joke about, you present, how many more candidates do you want to see? You've seen 10. Well, don't you have 10 more? Can I see everybody that applied? This was too short. This was too tall. This was too big. But when you are able to establish that relationship where the hiring manager has confidence that you really do understand their business, what they're looking for, and are on that target, they're less inclined to want to see 30 candidates. They trust you. And that comes from being in retained search. You don't want to send 20 people. You want to send 3 or 4 really good ones. And you want their issue to be.
But it's not just retained search, Dave. I did the same thing. How many times I had hiring managers that said, show me all the resumes. I want to see all the resumes. And one time I was just like, okay, sure. Here, let me give you all the resumes. I brought them over in a big box and I said, here's all the resumes. And right on top there, that's the applicant flow log that you have to fill out. So every time you review a resume, you got to write down their name and the reason why you dispositioned that resume and didn't include them. But you got to do that with every resume that's in there. That's your job now because you're going to review resumes. This is required. And then I said, or you can take my word for it. I'll review the resumes and I'll send you the ones that are the best ones. And the hiring manager looked at me and was like, yeah, can you do that for me? I was like, yeah, sure, no problem. That's kind of my job.
I think, for sure. And I think part of it is also our job to tell people what we do. My experience has been, even coming to ThoughtSpot, they're growing quickly. They're preparing for an IPO sometime in the future, but they hadn't had like very experienced people in talent. And we've got a great VP of people that has a lot of experience, and that was the first time they ever had that. And we have recruiters that have a lot of experience, and so that transition of going from very junior kind of like order takers, like go fill this job, okay, I'll read the resumes and set up interviews, to being partners, is still in process. And the only way that you do that is by performing, and being able to deliver and asking meaningful questions, and that relationship builds, and it's an ongoing process, but we are making great progress here.
Okay. So here's something I picked up on our previous conversation and from what you're talking about now. And I want to connect the dots for people that are listening, because I don't think we've talked about this yet. You treat every rec with the assumption that sourcing is going to be needed. So in other words, you do an intake on every rec, assuming sourcing will be needed on every job. We know sometimes it's not, but you don't start the intake as a regular recruiting intake and then add sourcing if you think it's going to be needed. You actually do it as a sourcing intake every time. Now, I teach people how to do sourcing intakes, and they are very different than recruiting intakes. So how are you, first of all, how are you overcoming perhaps the resistance, it may not be there, of hiring managers saying, this is a lot of questions, right? Because as a sourcer, when I get involved and when my people get involved, they're asking a lot of questions because the recruiter didn't ask them before, and now the job's in trouble. But you're doing this from the very beginning. They may be thinking to themselves, well, why are we getting the second degree when I can just push a button and the easy button and the next candidate pops out? Like, how are you overcoming that resistance?
Well, I mean, a couple ways. One, we've been able to get some great, really strong recruiters, and kind of up the ante as far as the recruiting team. Like, we've got some people that have been doing recruiting as long as I've been doing sourcing. So, they do those very deep, kinds of intakes anyway, and so to be a part of that with these more experienced recruiters, is kind of just like being just another voice in the room. So there's a couple ways that and this is still evolving. So we haven't ironed out all the kinks, and I'm sure that there are challenges to come. But it used to be kind of old school where, they open a rec and the recruiter would do a brief intake. And this is like when I first got here.
It was like perfunctory. Like, all right, well, you got this, and this.
Right,
okay,
right.
We're done.
And sometimes, a lot of times, you wouldn't find out that there was a problem until 4 or 5 weeks out when they hadn't seen any great candidates, and then they're doing it again. And I found that I was sitting with the hiring managers doing the intake again, which is frustrating. I've had 3 conversations with 3 different people, and that's when I kind of got the idea to instead of going away, doing research and coming back and asking them to look at something, I said, well, here, let's get on Zoom. Let me show you what I got. And we use Seek Out and LinkedIn, but I'm a big Seek Out fan. I was a beta user way back. I think it was like 2012 when they came out with their big AI release and whatever. And I've been a fan ever since. And just got on Zoom, shared my screen, and said, okay, here, this is this tool we use. Showed them all the different sites it scrapes to find information, and said, what are you looking for? And just started asking questions along the lines of these filters, showed them the power filters. Let me show you these power filters for software. Do any of these power filters around cloud apply to what you're looking for? Yeah, well, this one does. Check that one off. Go down the list of the filters, and they could see, the candidate universe going from 625 million people, whatever it is, chunk every time they would make a selection, and now you go from 620 million to 12, and they go, really, that's it?
During the intake, you're wait a minute,
Yep.
You're telling me that on the intake, you're with I just want to pause here because I don't know if a lot of people are getting what you just said. You're on the intake with the hiring manager for the first time. Potentially, you've never even spoken with the hiring manager before, and you are showing them live results on a screen share of your LinkedIn search or your Seek Out search.
That's where we've ended up.
And you're as they give you criteria, you're filtering it out, and they're seeing as you said, their universe dropping from 1 million candidates to 200,000 candidates. Add a criteria, 50,000 candidates, add a criteria, 10 candidates. And now they're like, oh, there's only 10 candidates that have all this criteria. There's no better argument for your requirements are ridiculous.
No better argument.
Your requirements are insane. There's nobody that can do this because we just did the filter. Okay, so now what happens?
Or if it's that important, here are your 10. How are we going to get these 10? There they are.
And by the way, let's talk about these 10 people right now. Do you want this one or this one?
Right now.
Yeah, right now. It's the intake meeting, and they're seeing their live candidates before they even. That's brilliant.
Yep.
That's brilliant.
My goal, I try to now. I mean, when we get that restrictive, I think, well, is there anything here? Can we maybe have a little less experience? I try to open it up a little bit.
Your goal is to get a realistic number. But
I try to get a list between 100 and 200 people. And here's why. Because the next step is it's all around the hiring manager's criteria. They are controlling this. I'm the pilot, but they're telling me the flight plan, right? And so once we get this list, Seek Out's got great analytics. So when we leave the meeting, I say, okay, I'm going to send you a link to this list. I'm going to give you the analytics so you can look at the overview, because Seek Out breaks it down, like what companies they're from, how much education they have, where they're located. So I give them the whole analytics report and the list, and I ask them to look through it and just a high-level overview. Scroll through the list, and anybody that, for whatever reason, that you just don't think that you'd really be that interested in talking to, use the tag hiring manager pass, and we'll just not include them right now. We can go back to them if we want, but we won't include them now. If you're interested, check interested. And if you wish you had 10 of these people, if you wish you could staff your department with 10 of this one person, mark them rock star, and we'll use those as our benchmarks. And Seek Out has this cool little feature called Clone, and it's using their AI technology. And sometimes it's on, sometimes it's a little off, but what it does do is kind of open your mind a little bit. And I do this right in front of the hiring manager. I say, let's hit this Clone button and see what Seek Out thinks. And it kind of opens up the universe and looks at candidates that we hadn't even thought of, using its AI. And the hiring manager goes, hey, that person looks
what about
interesting.
That one?
And
so
you
now you've expanded the criteria. Yeah. You've shown them a realistic match of what's out there, and you've expanded the criteria.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
And so I can use those rock stars to build out the list. So where we're heading now is they leave the intake with something tangible that makes everybody feel good. It makes the hiring manager feel good that they feel that we're on the same page. That's huge. They also have a product that they can actually go and look through at the intake. And it also gives me the opportunity to kind of put the ball back in their court and make them take some accountability to follow through and say, look, I'm not going to reach out to 500 people because we have a finite number of outreach credits. I need you to pick the ones that you're really interested in.
That you've already pre-selected.
Yep.
Yeah. And then whatever comes back after that. Yeah.
Well, and then when those people respond, I just forward them right to the hiring manager and tag the recruiter. And a lot of times the hiring manager reaches out to them themselves right then and there, because this is a passive candidate that's shown interest that the hiring manager's already decided that they want to talk to, given the opportunity. So we can strike right then and there when the iron's hot. And it's working pretty good. I mean, I don't have numbers yet because we had to fix our greenhouse, and it had been neglected for a while. But now that we have everything straightened out, we're going to be able to start running real-time metrics. But I'm seeing that it used to be 2 or 3, sometimes 5 or 6 weeks before sourcing even began. And now we're able to do outreaches in the first week.
Seriously?
So that's got to be affecting cycle time.
No way.
Well, I mean, because sometimes I wouldn't even know that there was a problem.
Oh, gotcha.
Applicants are coming in, they're coming in. Right. And I didn't even know the job was an issue, and all of a sudden, it's been open for a month. Can you help me find some people? So that's 30 days out. Now we do passive outreaches within a week. And I think that's, in this talent market, I mean, we were just on that sourcing summit,
not only are you reducing that cycle time and the passive outreach is getting faster, but also you're reaching out to a lot fewer people, which is accelerating even further, right? So instead of reaching out to 100 people, you're reaching out to 20 because they've been sort of pre-filtered. Now, a lot of sources do that, but they do that by sending the profiles to the hiring manager, not by having this live intake. So I feel like I need to end this call right now because I've been doing my job wrong, and I'm going to go start doing what you just told me to do. Like, this is it. I'm done for the day. I'm going to go back and do that because, normally we send them the profiles that we sourced. Then they give us feedback. You're saying you're not even doing that. You're going to do it live on the intake call with the hiring manager.
Yep.
Now, if you're, 3 steps removed, that might be a little bit challenging. So I need to think about that a little bit. But so now you've got this a short list, essentially, that you're going to reach out to, and you can be really aggressive, and you can write very personalized emails to each one of them.
Very personalized,
each one of them have been reviewed by, when you say, hey, Bob, I'm interested in talking to you because our hiring manager looked at your profile. You're not making that up. You're actually like, Bob, really, your profile really was looked at. And I'm going to talk to you about what this hiring manager actually said about your profile. That's pretty cool.
Exactly. And that the hiring manager, if you be open, he or she would be willing to have an exploratory conversation just to tell you what's going on over here, and guess what? It actually happens. If they respond,
Disclaimer,
we get them on the
that
phone
might
with the
not
hiring
work
manager.
with every company, Steve, because there are companies where
Not
there's
with every
lots of
company, for
rules.
sure.
But
I think that there's a
still, the
lot of
principle
room
is there.
for even the larger companies I've worked in to do
Customize
some
that.
version of this. To really make sure that there's that out of the gate collaboration and understanding that, hey, we're on the same page. We've got the profile pinned. Here's some people. Let's start here. It's not. I mean, this is not the end. And I also leave an open invitation for hiring managers to, hey, schedule some more time with me. And hey, schedule a half hour. Can we look at maybe this approach, or can we target these specific companies? So I've got hiring managers calling me, asking for more FaceTime so that we can get on together and dig into these different wells that they think they have a brainstorm, or they hear that this company is changing or whatever. And together we go and we mine that and reach out to them right then and there. So we make the list and create our outreach, and boom, it's out the gate once we got this process.
That's great. I love it. Man, I'm gonna be telling everybody about this. Well, hopefully they'll watch the recording. I don't want to keep beating this up because I think what you've given us is just absolutely brilliant. But I did want to touch on one other thing, because I touted you as a guest on the show as an LGBTQIA plus champion, and I know that that's something that's close to you. But you actually elevated that for me when you said global means global, and and diversity global is a whole different, I was formerly part of the International Standards Organization Committee on Recruiting and Sourcing, and helped define the ISO definition for recruiting and for sourcing and for diversity. And I can tell you from the ISO's point of view, with 72 participating countries, defining diversity for 72 countries, including Germany and Italy and African countries and Asian countries, is not an easy thing. So what does global diversity look like? Talk to me about that.
I mean, it's evolving really fast, and COVID sped us up. Like I know that you and I both worked virtually for decades, right? I mean, sourcing is one of those jobs that you could dig in at home and really focus and get the work done. But there's always been this apprehension about, people working at home. Are they watching TV all day, or going to the park and not working
by the beach?
And I think and there's always going to be those people that'll, unfortunately take advantage of that. But for the most part, my experience has been that people that work at home, work super hard. Sometimes put in more hours than people in an office where there's a finite, hours of operation. I find myself working at midnight sometimes, like I need to go to bed. I need to watch some TV or do something else, but you really get in focused. But more so than that, it gives us the opportunity to be able to control our own schedule. I wrote an article for Recruiting Daily about a year ago when this whole COVID thing started, about now that you're working at home, you kind of got to look at your personal schedule and your work-life schedule. It's not like work-life balance anymore. It's like integrating the two, right? So like right now, any moment, the dogs might bark because the Sears guy is coming to fix my fridge that is not working. And that has to be a part of my day, and doctor's appointments and things. So all these things that we used to have to run out of the office to do, I put these on my calendar so that first of all, I don't have a hiring manager schedule something when I'm going to be at the doctor or something like that. It's all become like one big thing of time management, which also allows me to be in touch with our India team, because I'll do training at midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, my time, by choice, because I want to be able to,
that's when you have time.
That's when I have time, and that's when they have time, and bosses are flexible with, hey man, it's not a matter of making sure you're in your seat. It's a matter of productivity and quality of work. And now that many people are working at home, companies are becoming more comfortable with, at first, even 6 months ago, when I joined ThoughtSpot, it was kind of like, well, let's look for people in the San Francisco Bay Area, because that's where their corporate headquarters were. Now we don't have a physical corporate headquarters. They closed the offices because we decided that in the U.S. we're going to be a virtual company. And that made them comfortable. Well, how about California? Well, how about the West Coast? Well, does it really matter? Nah. Dallas is good. Austin's got a huge tech market. There's some good people in Chicago. Opened it up to the whole U.S. Now we just hired some people in Bucharest. We had no plans, to my knowledge anyway, of being over there, but because of relationships and opportunities. and opportunities and being able to find some skilled people. Why not? These, we hired according to skill set and experience, not location. And I think it's going to have huge ramifications, because I can't tell you how much back in the old days doing retained search, how many times I had somebody have to turn down an offer because like their spouse's career would be affected if they had to relocate. Well, I love this job, but my wife's a doctor at the Cleveland Clinic, and we can't move. It's a great opportunity, but I can't go. So now for a lot of jobs, I mean, obviously doctors got to be there, but for jobs that are like professional level coders, IT people, HR people, things like that, where we could be at home, it's going to open up the career. I mean, the talent pools all over the world, I think, in ways that companies are just now starting to realize. And global is going to mean global. Right.
Yeah. And I was going to circle back to that. Exactly that. So I hope I'm not misinterpreting what you're saying. Keep me honest here if this is what you're saying. This globalization, which we've seen happening for the last 20 years anyway. I mean, the internet has basically facilitated globalization, but now it's significantly accelerated. So there's a pivotal point that, the tragedy of COVID has brought about this acceleration of globalization. Right. And maybe we didn't need this, as horrible as this virus is and devastating as it is. Maybe we did need this to kind of give us a kick in the pants to make that next leap and leave behind the entrapments of congested cities and pollution through, gasoline powered cars and all that. So looking at the silver lining in the horrible, world of COVID, it's put us into this other world where we're starting to see globalization as an advantage. But tying that to diversity, are you saying that through globalization, we don't have to worry about diversity as much because global means everybody? I mean, inclusion is going to happen. I think we have to actually be more aware of diversity, because now, if we're really going to hire for skill and talent, that means we're going to have to learn to be tolerant of people's, their cultures,
lifestyles, of their cultures, religions, whatever. We're going to have to learn to agree to disagree, not make judgments. So the idea of diversity and inclusion is to have environments where all people of all of these different beliefs and backgrounds and ethnicities can work effectively together. As we globalize even more, it's gonna be truly diverse. I mean,
so you're not saying globalization is the answer to diversity. You're saying globalization is bringing a whole nother exponentially larger challenge, because now we don't just need to be diverse in the definition that we have in our country, but we have to be diverse and aware of diversity in everybody else's definition, not just our own country's, every other country's definition, which a lot of people don't even understand.
The IMF published. The IMF did this article, and I can't remember the name of it, but I'm sure if you Googled IMF workforce report or something like that, global workforce report, it was pre-COVID, but it's a meaty read. It's like one of their IMF like analytical things. It's like 100 pages. But it was all about
IMF
how work
is the International Monetary Fund, for those of you that don't know IMF.
Right, exactly. They were looking at a global forecast of workforce, and it's a great report, and I learned a lot from it. That it used to be either you're full time or part time, right? Now there's all these other shades of employment. Contractors. I just heard what did I hear? I heard that is it LinkedIn that's going to be opening up for freelancers? I think it's LinkedIn.
It already did.
I can't remember.
There's definitely a LinkedIn for freelancers.
Yeah. But I mean, you're right, exactly. So I mean, but when before that wasn't a thing, and so and this report breaks through and goes through all these different shades of employment. You can be a contractor, you can be a temp, you can be a part-time, a full-time, a seasonal, and how there's such a talent shortage worldwide that companies are going to be forced to be flexible and looking at all these different ways to employ people, because work is changing. Our definition of work is changing. How we do our work is changing. The technology is making our work, how we do our work much different than it was 20 years ago. And we can, you and I can sit here, hundreds of miles apart and have these conversations in real time and share ideas and strategize, or we can have 100 people on this call and do the same thing from all over the world. And that's a tremendous opportunity. And the businesses that are agile and can adapt and be comfortable with that are the ones that I think are going to be the most successful, because they are the ones that are going to be able to find truly the best talent out there, no matter where they are, what they do, what they believe, and leverage that to be successful. Or you can be bound by, still wanting people in the Bay Area and fighting over.
They can come to the office.
I mean, that's where it's going to be.
They can drive 2.5 hours to cover 3 miles so they can come to the office. And yeah, right. I think I found the article, so I posted it on the LinkedIn feed here.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's chewy. Don't try to read it all at once. It's a lot but it's got a lot of great data, great tables and charts and stuff. I think it took me a month to really digest it, but I mean, it's a really great insight. I mean, I think it took them. If you look at like the preface or whatever of the article, it took them a couple of years to put this report together, because it's something that of course the banks and the money holders, this is a serious issue. I mean, if companies can't get work done, they don't make money. And so, as part of the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, they're very serious about looking at how labor and work and employment is evolving, as we globalize.
Well, as much as I'd love to ramble on for a while, because it's two pretty big revelations. One that I can put immediately to use, and the other one that I'm going to have to think about more, because it's just I'm asking myself more questions. Now, fortunately, on our next episode in Shally's Alley, our guest is going to be a diversity connoisseur that specifically works on consulting in the diversity space. So I might just segue this topic and ask her a couple of questions to try to dig into this.
No, I'd love to hear. I mean, these are things I've been thinking about. I've seen it, I've seen these webinars where HR leaders are challenged with,
global diversity,
virtual employment, and where they should hire. And it's going to be an ongoing topic of discussion for a decade.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, really. We think we're prejudiced in this country, and we have these defined versions of what's acceptable and what's not, and what we call people that have they're bigoted or have these prejudices, right? We think that's something that's American, but believe me, I've been to other countries where their concept of prejudice and their racism, I think a friend of mine posted on LinkedIn a few months ago that, I don't want to say who, but the country that they are from and live in passed a law that made it illegal to talk about being queer or gay in schools in that country. Weird. So literally going backwards, I mean, that law did not exist. It was allowed, and now they are disallowing it legally in this country. Needless to say, he has left the country because, that's his community. And he was just like, I can't. So
I get it. Yeah, that's tough, because, when you stop talking about things, is when things start to melt down and catch on fire.
Right. So, and that's going on in one country. Who knows? So when you look at global diversity, there are going to be some major hurdles to overcome in countries that don't even think about diversity at all. Right. So
ready or not, here it comes.
Right, exactly. Yeah, no choice. The other thing I was going to say is, I worked in Saudi Arabia for a while, and something that really struck me, because there's a lot of preconceived notions about the Saudi and people in the kingdom the KSA, and and how they treat others and so on. There's a lot of preconceived notions from the outside, but they're on a path to open things up. It's something that really struck me, and it just woke me up to a fact that I knew about, but just never really sat with. And that is that in their environment, because of the mixture of people, they have to provide allocations and make concessions and be able to provide for the ability for people that observe different holiday days and different holy days during the week. So, for example, here in the United States, we think of Saturday and Sunday as the weekend. In some cultures, Sabbath, Saturday is the holy day. In some cultures, Sunday is the holy day where they go to church. Well, there they have people who worship on Friday. And for them, Friday and Saturday is the weekend. Sunday is the first day of the week, and they go to work on Sunday. They have people who worship on Saturday. They have people who worship on Sunday. So their weekend is not Saturday and Sunday. Their weekend is basically Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, depending on what culture you're in. And so they have to provide, if they have a team member that has a weekend on Sunday and Monday, they need to cover for that person on Monday, and they need to provide someone that covers for that person that doesn't have their weekend on Monday. It's way more complicated. Like, think about the just scheduling, and
it does open a lot of doors, doesn't it? It opens a lot of doors of complexity. But I think that everybody, for so long, we've been accustomed to just kind of having it, the way it is, right? And I think that if we just open ourselves up a little bit to saying, hey, well, I want Christmas off. Why shouldn't someone of a different religion have their holy day off?
Start listening to what's
at least it certainly makes sense. It certainly is fair. It's certainly the humane and right thing to do. And now that we're globalizing, I think that
it's going to be more
if anything, hey, now we got somebody that could work Sunday. Now we got somebody that could work Sundays, we could use that diversity to cover things where we were hard pressed to find people to work on Sunday before.
Certain people are not going to have a problem working on Sunday because it's the first day of the week for them.
Exactly.
And so other people won't have a problem working Friday because they've been working Friday their whole lives. So so in my mind, globalization has an advantage because the diversity should eventually handle itself. But of course, we have to do a lot of listening and a lot of adjusting to get there. And I'm not going to solve
a lot of listening
today. But
that's right. Yeah. I think if you just ask people, hey, what's your, when can you work, and allow them to be honest and transparent, and hospitals, like, I did healthcare recruiting for a while, and my husband's in the healthcare field. Scheduling in a hospital is a great example. It's all over the place depending on who's there and what their needs are, and they have to be, they have people on call, and I think companies kind of have to almost look at that as a model of, hey, if you got a customer that wants a new product, what are we going to do? Come on, guys, we're going to work a lot now, but then give people time off. Then, we're going to have to adjust to the load. We're going to have to adjust to the right. Yeah, we're going to have to. It's no longer 9 to 5 Monday through Friday. That's for sure.
It's true. Follow the sun, as they say in some of the companies that have been. Follow the sun. There's always somebody working somewhere on the planet. Steve, I got to say thank you so much for being here. I think we have another episode that we need to record, so I'll be bringing you back in later on. Any last words of wisdom for our listeners? Anything I didn't ask you about that you want to talk about?
No, I would love to come back again. If anybody, reach out to me on LinkedIn if you want to connect and learn a little bit more about the intake that we're still in the process of refining. But I'm more than happy to share, be collaborative, and I always like to hear great ideas.
Thank you so much. Well, that's it for Shally Zally this week. Have a great weekend, everybody, and take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.